Hey, Redcasters, be sure to subscribe to our channel and ring the bell to be notified about our latest videos. Go Big Red.
Welcome to the Go Big Redcast, the Husker Fan Sports Show.
Welcome to the Go Big Redcast. I'm your host, David Gaspers, and I'm with Boomer.
Well, when you look at it, the NCAA tournament, all their games aren't technically road games. They're all neutral sites. So really, road wins are overrated.
That's right. We find on neutral sites. We beat Oklahoma State on a neutral site, right?
Yeah, exactly. So it's fine.
Right, sure, absolutely. Also with Redcast Rob.
Well, first of all, I'd like to congratulate our Herdat brethren over at the No Block, No Rock on their brand new set for their podcast. It's beautiful, looks great. I would say that it is only outmatched by the gentleman over at the Generation Red podcast, which Ken and Scott have put together something beautiful there. But you know what? Nobody in Herdat has a comic book collection like I do. So suck it, brothers.
Well, you got to claim wins wherever you can get them, Rob.
Well, and I would call this a road win since I now have an office that I work at. So this is technically I'm not working at home anymore.
All right. That's good stuff. Well, tell you what, we're going to dive right in. Let's talk about some Nebraska ball. And we did schedule this show to follow the Nebraska Northwestern game. We're hoping that we could talk about a road win that we've been desperately looking for, but it was not to be. Nebraska falls 80-68 to the Wildcats of Northwestern. And Boomer, this is a continuing trend of unable to get over the hump. We were so close on Sunday, which I think gave some hope to people that this could be the day. Nebraska lost in overtime to the Fighting Illini in a game with seconds from getting it right, and that would have been a huge quad one road win. Tonight would have been a quad one road win, and just haven't been able to get it done there on the road. Immediate thoughts after this loss by the Huskers?
Yeah, it's frustrating. We talked about this 4-game stretch starting with Maryland and ending here in Northwestern that we. I think our goal was just to win any 2 of those 4 and to put yourself in a really good position, either whether it was 2 road wins, Maryland and Northwestern, or beating, one of the ranked teams and any of the other ones, I think is what we were all really hoping for out of this stretch. And, well, they didn't do it. They looked awful against Maryland. That was one of the worst games I've seen them play. And then played a terrible half against Wisconsin and then a great half, and then played pretty good ball against Illinois and the referees and, simultaneously, and, put up a valiant effort. And I think that kind of got us a little hope here. And just tonight, it was just a lot of the same woes that when this team isn't doing well, it's the same stuff. They're getting, they're letting the other team just dominate the offensive rebounds. I think they had like +10 on that. We were turning the ball over, weren't very good with ball control, and just the other team just, always seems to go on these weird scoring streaks. We tweeted tonight that it seems like every Nebraska loss, it's like a Mad Lib. It's, insert other team here as their best night doing blank here, and every time it happens, it's either, 3-point percentage, turnovers, first half scoring, whatever it is.
Yeah, right.
That just seems to come up. It's uncanny how that happens. And that's just, it's just bothered this. Yeah, hell, it's bothered the program for decades now, it seems, or, that just seems to be what happens to us. But
yeah.
So, I mean, there were positives in this 4-game stretch. The negatives, I think, slightly outweigh the positives in these 4 games. But, yeah, that's just kind of where we're at. I'm still processing this Northwestern loss, as annoying as it is. So, yeah.
I think, Rob, I think Boomer is indicative of most Nebraska basketball fans that have been beaten and battered over decades of bad basketball. And I think I think Boomer would say he is concerned with this team and their chances to make the NCAA tournament. Is that fair, Boomer?
Yeah, I know you look at the metrics and, we've got those quad one wins, and that is, promising in certain aspects. But, Nebraska fans have been burned so many times in the past, that the 2017-2018 season is, still in everybody's mind. Granted, that team didn't have those wins, but I think
Nope, sure didn't.
There's just that always underlying fear that either the team is just going to have just a bad collapse at the end of the year, which could hurt. I mean, the schedule sets up in terms of just teams. They should be able to beat everybody left on the schedule if they play reasonably well. But, we've seen it in the past that they can collapse, and we rightfully fear what the committee will do, when they see this tournament. I know it's not the same thing as college football, but we've seen how college sports, they put in the teams they want and they find a reason to justify it. And if you really didn't want to keep, say, a 21 Nebraska team or let them in the tournament, they could point to, hey, you don't have any road wins of quality. They would find a reason to keep them out.
Yeah.
They do have a road win of
Husker
quality,
fans
and it was
fear.
against a Kansas
I'm
State
just kind
team
of saying
that's
what the fears are at this point. So.
Yeah, but they do have a road win of quality, and it's against a Kansas State team that's been playing really well as of late, who just beat the number 3 team in the country.
I wouldn't say as of late. Kansas was a big win for them, but they've been
I agree. They had lost 4 straight going in.
And then we saw today, Wisconsin and Creighton both lose the same day too. So
you're only as good as your last win or loss, right?
Right.
So.
That's right, Rob. Well, Rob, as a Nebraska basketball fan that isn't as beaten down as folks who've been following this for
I'm going to
30
disagree
years.
so hard with you on
You
that
have
one.
been beaten down?
Well, okay. Not only am I a Nebraska basketball fan, but I'm also an Arizona basketball fan.
Yes, we all know this, Rob.
And
you say this all the time.
But since I'm aware of that. But since '97, Arizona has some of the worst tournament losses in the history of the NCAA, including last year. So don't talk to me about being beat down, okay, bud?
I hear you. Yeah, but you were a 2 seed,
and they lost to 6, and they lost to Princeton.
Yes.
And you all just let Princeton fans harass me for the entire day.
The fact that you got to a 2 seed, Nebraska fans couldn't dream of that type of successful season. Fair. They literally have never even experienced it, right?
Our best season was a 3 seed.
A 3 seed, right? And that's by far. I think the next were we a 6 1 year underneath, and then everything else was like
6
double
or
digits?
Maybe an 8. Yeah, that'd probably be about it. I'll try to find it real quick.
Miles,
it hasn't been anywhere close to that.
11. Yeah, I mean, so
tonight's just the wrong night to ask me that because I have so many thoughts on the game, but none of them involve words.
None of them are positive.
Yes, none of them use words that we are allowed to use on this podcast.
Rob,
we are a family.
Talk about the Illinois game then. How about that? Because that was. Even though it was a loss, I think it was Hockey or Boomer sent out, video of the BTN crew saying, "Hey, if show me 34 better at-large teams than Nebraska." I was listening on Sirius XM radio driving back from the mountains, and I had the Illinois local broadcast, and they're like, "This team's a tournament team if I ever saw one." Right? We didn't get the win. Right. But I think a lot of people have seen a lot of basketball, watched Nebraska play its best, and they look like they looked apart. Right.
Yeah, they do. And that's the thing, though, is that it's really hard for me because I so many times I want to blame the team, but this team and we were talking about this before the show where this team really depends on a flow of the game. Right. Their offense requires certain type of movement around the ball, certain type of movement off the ball. And it just feels like every time this team goes on the road, I mean, I think at one point tonight, I counted something like 6 whistles in 30 seconds of real basketball time tonight. And it's like, that's not even basketball. All right. That is like a ref show. And it's so hard with these Big Ten refs to even sit here and watch a lot of these games. I'll even watch games that aren't Nebraska, just trying to see how, maybe the team that they're going to be playing, next is playing right now. And, and I watch it and I'm just like, it's just terrible. And it's not like it in any other conference around the country. No other conference. Like you said, Dave, like the ACC, the Pac-12, or whatever's left of it now. I mean, still they play such a nice flow of basketball. There's a lot of fast breaks. There's a lot of, pull-up threes. There's a lot of, fake pull-up threes that dump the ball down inside to the big guy and dunks. But it's like a consistent flow. In the Big Ten, that guy looked at him wrong. I think I'm going to blow the whistle and borderline technical foul. And I think it's terrible. And I'm not even exaggerating at this point. It's just a terrible style of reffing a game that doesn't allow for any type of flow. And it's just unfortunate because I think in a couple of other leagues right now, we would be lights out the way we shoot the ball from outside.
Yeah.
Consistent
No,
flow.
I agree with that. And that maybe if we can make it to the tournament, maybe that bodes well to actually get that victory, because Big Ten teams have struggled to
hopefully not in the bracket they have them in now, where they would play Arizona.
There's 94
round.
Brackets, Rob. You're looking at one of them.
And again, that would mean Arizona would actually have to beat a 2 seed.
You know what? I will, Boomer. I swear to God, I will fight you. All right.
All right. Settle down, Rob. I love the passion. But what I'm trying to illustrate here.
Yeah, Dave, the best seed we ever were was the 6th seed after that 3, and that's the year we lost to 10, which
we lost.
I still don't understand that loss either. But
yeah. So what I'm trying to illustrate here is I think it's multifaceted here, in the sense that it's almost counterintuitive, because you would think if the Big Ten refs are calling a game closer, to Rob's point, and blowing their whistle all the time, the players and the coaches would respond to such tight officiating and not do as much hand checking and physical defense, right? Because they're tired of getting all these calls. But that doesn't really work, and it goes both ways. It's like, you think if the Big Ten wanted more freedom of movement, like you see in some other leagues and what you do see in the NCAA tournament, you would have your refs intentionally, try to establish freedom of movement as something that's fundamental to how the game is going to be played, and then have the coaches respond to that. But it seems to be in this weird space where you don't get either of those things, right? I was watching the North Carolina Duke game on Saturday. They went 6 minutes of basketball time in 6 minutes of real time. They blew through the 12-minute under 12 timeout and the 8-minute timeout without stopping. I don't think that's ever happened in Big Ten basketball, Rob, right? I mean, it's insane, right?
Well, that's because it's actual basketball and the refs let them play, and they don't call ticky-tack fouls, So
it looks, well, yeah, but the players also allow more freedom of movement, right? I mean, like, it's just more of a free-flowing game.
Yeah.
And it does look more like the NBA, which is also big on freedom of movement. Mm-hmm. And you just don't get that in the Big Ten. And then it might be one of the reasons why we've struggled to win a national championship in this conference over the last 20-some years.
Yeah. So why is that the case? I guess, where does that stem from? I mean, why?
I don't know.
Why is the reffing philosophy so different? Because it does seem to be. I agree with you, Dave. It doesn't make sense why it's so vastly different compared to other games.
Because the Big Ten is basically settled on upper level high school referees, as opposed to actually getting guys that are qualified for the job. Maybe they don't pay as well.
Are they like full-time refs, or what do they do? I guess I haven't looked into it that deeply. I mean, what does?
Well, it's funny that you ask this too, because I do have a little bit of knowledge. I mean, it might be kind of 30 years old or whatever, but when I was in high school, my English teacher was named Mark Reichling, and he was a referee for the Pac-12, and then eventually he became the head of the Referees Association for the Pac-12. And I remember him talking a lot about the way that calling games and officiating, because there was one game that he called and he came back in and a bunch of us were giving him a hard time about like some of the calls he was making in the game. So he kind of the whole situation works where the refs sit down, they go through classes, they actually learn, the league puts them through this, not individual leagues, put them through these classes, teach them about the rules of basketball over and over again, any changes that may have been made. They get together as officiating crews. They talk about like how they want to call the flow of the game, and they all come to an agreement on it. And it seems to me like the Big Ten just doesn't know how to do that.
Yeah. I mean, to answer your question, Boomer, Rob is correct. Just like college football referees, they typically have another full-time job, typically a lawyer or something of that nature. And then they, do this on the side. That's different than NFL or NBA, which has dedicated like referee unions and that type of thing. But
well, in fairness, the Big Ten doesn't really have the revenue stream for any of the entire full-time refs. So
definitely not.
I guess that's understandable.
Well, let's turn forward here a little bit. There's 7 games left on the schedule, I believe. 4 at home, 3 on the road. It does lighten up a little bit on the cadence, right? I mean, Fred noted this after, I believe, the Maryland game, or maybe it was the Ohio State game that we won before Maryland, is that they're going to have quite a few games in a row. And sure enough, they've knocked out. It feels like they've played every third or fourth day for the last 2 weeks. Well, they have Michigan on Saturday, I believe. Is that right? And then they don't play again until the following Saturday.
Correct. Yeah, they got a week off.
And so they have a whole week off, and then they have kind of a Wednesday, Thursday, and Sunday type back and forth. I think they play the next 3 Sundays after that to wrap up the season. And so, I mean, it won't be quite as grueling, and 4 of those are home games. So hopefully they're rested. It is a tough turnaround time. I mean, they put their heart and soul into that Illinois game. They didn't get it done. That's on Sunday night, essentially. They probably fly back to Nebraska, did 2 days of classes. They probably didn't practice on Monday. They fly right back out to Chicago. And so, I mean, that's tough, hopefully they can find it. They do have a lightened schedule, right, Boomer? I mean, they may not have another quad 1 win on this schedule until they get to the Big Ten tournament, but they've got 7 teams that they can beat across the board. I'm not saying they're going to do that, but they can at least go 4-3, and I think 5-2 or better is out there for them.
Yeah, I mean, I guess where would you put, what do they need to win? So for you to say, okay, this team is safely in the tournament.
I feel like with the quad 1 wins they have, which to Rob's point, not as many teams have that. And that we've been competitive in the Big Ten all year long. Yes, the road wins, lack of road wins is going to knock down a seeding situation. But I think 20 wins here, if they get 4 more of these, which will be all quad 2 wins approximately, or, at worst, I don't think there's any quad 3s out there. It's probably quad 2s. I think they're in. I don't think they're even on the bubble at that level. That's 10-10 in conference, 20 wins overall. They still have another potential win in a conference tournament game. They're in. I think they're a 10 seed probably. I don't think
they're no playing wins. I mean, is that a concern to you if for some reason they lose at Indiana and Ohio State? And
if they went 3-4 and only had 19 wins, I would then my concern meter would go up. But if they just win the 4 games at home, I think they're going to get in. To your point, Boomer, I don't think there's a conspiracy theory against this Nebraska team. They're not trying to keep them out.
No,
or
I don't think it's a conspiracy.
That.
I just think if push comes to shove, they would have reasons to keep Nebraska out. If they
but I would say any team that's supposedly on the bubble, quote unquote, which is right. If you're on the bad side or the good side, if you're somewhere in the range of being a 10, 11, 12 seed as at large, or a team that's the last 4 out or the next 4 out, if you're in that group, everybody has flaws in their resume. Literally everyone has flaws on their resume. If
Dave, your logic is so working with me tonight. Normally I just want to tell you to shut up, like you tell me. But
so you can tell me,
it's working for me, dude. It's working.
You can tell me Nebraska has flaws in their resume. Yeah, that's why they're at that spot.
Yeah, they're not like a 2 or 3 seed where it's like, okay,
but the flaws that the 2018 team had were so far greater. I mean, there was no quality wins on that schedule.
Okay, so let's talk the other way around. All right, let's turn it around. Let's stop talking about, because they're going to make the tournament. I have no doubt in my mind they're going to make the tournament. All right, they're going to end up with either 20, 21 wins. They're going to get at least 1 win. They might even get to the point now of where they can win out here. They could end up being like a bye team in the Big Ten tournament. You know what I mean? There's still that possibility involved, right?
There's a lot of wins up in this schedule.
Let's talk from the positive schedule. Okay, let's see they go out and they win these last 7 games. They win every single one of them. All right, that puts them at 23 wins, 23-8. Okay. And then they go into the Big Ten tournament. They win 1 or 2 games in there. Right. And maybe they get a bye. Maybe they don't, but they should. All right. So they go in there. So that puts them at 24, 25 wins going into an NCAA tournament. 1, they're not going to miss it. 2, they could end up like a 5 or 6 seed at that point. There's so that we can look at for this team, because they already have a lot of the wins that most teams don't even have right now. Even some of the teams that are at that seed level. So, I mean, there's still a possibility. And I'm not going to sit here and just cry over the fact that like they're having a hard time winning on the road in a conference where a lot of teams don't win on the road. Wisconsin just lost to freaking Michigan, a 3-win Michigan on the road tonight. So, I mean, we need to stop crying as Nebraska fans and start looking at what could positively happen. And if 7 games against lower level teams in this conference, we could easily go 7-0. We could probably go 5-2. At the worst case scenario, we go 4-3. We win 1 game in the Big. I mean, there's just so many good things happening with this team, and it's just tired of the negative. I get it. Everyone's been snake bitten so long, but I'm trying to focus on this team right here in front of us. You know, this is the team in front of us. This is the team we wanted, and this isn't last year's team. This isn't the year before's team. I mean, this team is so much better than any of those teams. And so as far as I'm concerned, it's like, we're going to the tournament. We're probably going to win our first tournament game. I actually predicted that we will win our first tournament game before the season even started. And God damn it, I'm sticking with it.
I love it, Rob. I love it.
I hope we can go back and edit this show to throw some patriotic music behind that.
I'm sure we can. Yeah.
Or at least some Nebraska flags flying.
Oh my God. Like the Nebraska fight song would be perfect.
Yeah. I would say to any fans that are planning on going to home games or maybe waffling on should they attend or not. I mean, like, support them like crazy at home and make sure that environment is vicious for those opponents, and those 4 home games are going to be easier to get across, right? Then you're just looking to steal a road game somewhere out of Indiana, Ohio State, or Michigan, and you're 5-2, and we're not talking about this on Selection Sunday because they're in, right?
Yeah, that's the big key. The team needs to just make it so it's not a question. Yeah,
I
think that's
for the fans right more than anything.
Yeah,
I mean, all we need is one more win, and we're going bowling.
That's right. No, I mean, like,
wait,
that worked out well, Rob. So no worries.
Sorry, guys.
Yeah, let's. I think they'll get over the threshold this time. They do look like a team that can win in the tournament. They would be better off if they had that road win. It's tough because they've had that Minnesota game early in the year.
Yeah,
Rutgers overtime and Illinois overtime. You get one of those, and they'd be in better shape.
And they could have easily had 2 of those, which would have been. We wouldn't even be talking about this. It would just be we're arguing about seeding now. But yeah, that's the thing. They're just leaving that little kind of window for issues. They could have shut the window.
We just went over this. Knock it off.
I mean, I think that going forward, I'm hoping that that we can start talking about seeding for Fred Hoiberg teams in the future, right? I mean, you got to get over the hump and get in the tournament, and then start doing that on a regular basis. This is the team that will hopefully get us in the tournament for the first time, and then from there on in, I mean, I think we see the formula, and it's working, and they need to continue to recruit to this and figure out how to win on the road in the Big Ten, and they're going to be fine for years to come, I think. So I think it works.
Goddamn right, Dave.
Absolutely.
I appreciate the optimism.
Yeah, it's not even optimism for me. I just look at the team. I watch it. It's like I watch a lot of basketball, right?
I do too, Dave. Like I'm on the side with you. This is
35, 40 years of watching college basketball. They're not a bad team. They're not wishy-washy. They struggle on the road. I get it. But I think you look at a lot of the metrics, there's a reason why they're in 94 brackets. They aren't a bad team.
No. This is I want Redcasters to know that tonight is one of the very rare occasions where Dave and I have not disagreed once in the first 24 minutes and 10 seconds.
Yet, so yes, that can happen.
It's early.
Well, we're going to be talking recruiting here really soon, so I really can't think of anything negative we'll be talking about there either, because this is going to be probably one of the greatest recruiting classes in the history of Nebraska football. So.
Well, let's go there, Rob. And you always have these on, but let's have everyone put on their scarlet-colored glasses and talk all things Husker football. And it was signing day part 2, as our intro slide indicated. It was the February signing day. It's not what it used to be.
No.
What was that Toby Keith song? Go.
I don't know. He rip.
But it's the same as ever was, or something like that. But
We'll just go with the
we did
Talking
get
Heads quote there, same as it ever was. Yeah.
there. We go.
Maybe we could give him a call and ask. Oh, never.
No. We did have a Matt Rhule presser. We did get an additional signee today in Keanu. Is that right? Will Height.
Keona Will Height. Yeah.
From Arizona.
No
who
way.
had been committed to Washington before Kalen DeBoer had left. He looked like he was going to commit to UCLA, but then the Chip Kelly rumors that he was just going to leave to become an OC in the NFL came up, and he decided to take a deeper look at Nebraska, and we got an additional edge rusher.
Yeah.
So that's great.
One of the Terrence Knighton has a good relationship with his family, and so he'd been in touch with him throughout this entire process, respecting his commitment to Washington, respecting his possible commitment to UCLA, but kind of always staying on the outside of it. And the second that there was any doubt and he got word of any type of doubt, like swooped in there and got him. And it's a beautiful get. I mean, they call him the kid a 3-star, but I mean, I don't know that there's a whole lot of D1 teams that wouldn't have a kid like this that can play from either side of the line. You know, they can move him around, and they already talked about how that's how they plan on doing it. Rhule kind of hinted that, you know, he sees, you know, some of these freshmen already making an impact on the defense this year, going to come in and play a good role in there. You know, so it's exciting to see, because it sounds to me like this is a guy that Rhule wanted all along, didn't think he was going to get, and just kind of trusted his coaching staff to stay on the ball and get this kid to actually commit when they had the opportunity. And that's why he hired those guys. He actually said that he does not enjoy the recruiting process himself. That's why he hires coaches to do it for him. And it's
he's our best recruiter.
well, you know, maybe that's just him being humble. Maybe that's the preacher's son in him or something, right? But I mean, at the same time, he did say those words, and so I'm going to take him at it. But you know, it's like it's just nice to see, because it puts a cherry on top of a recruiting class where everyone just wants to talk about, like, you see all the haters out there for Nebraska that say, like, nobody wants to come play at Nebraska. And here we are sitting at like the number, somewhere between, like, depending on where you look, 16 to 18 ranked recruiting class in the country. And I think like number 3 or 4 in the Big Ten right now. So, I mean, you know, we are
the newer old Big Ten, Rob.
What's that?
The newer old Big Ten.
Big Ten. I'm sorry.
As in, like, you're including.
No, I'm not including USC or any of those teams.
Well, yeah, 24/7 has a 6th in the new Big Ten. That's including USC and all the new in Oregon and all the new.
Yeah. So there you go. I mean, that's still. It's amazing. You know what I mean? It's what he's doing is amazing, and people need to realize that, like, the kind of work that's going into this, especially with those new schools being added into the league, because, you know, a lot of these kids now that were coming, you know, that may have been wanting to play in the Big Ten, that are coming out of like Southern California or those areas, now have an opportunity to play in the Big Ten and stay close to home. So it's harder and harder. And if you look at our breakdown of where it is that we're recruiting from, you know, there's Nebraska, there's I believe there's Colorado, there is Florida, there's Texas. I think there's a few from California. I mean, it's all over the board. So it's just a beautiful thing to see what they're doing right now.
Yeah. So, I mean, I guess I don't get too wrapped up in those team rankings. I mean, Frost delivered some good team rankings too. But what I do like about this class from Rhule is how long some of these players have been committed and stuck with the class, and I feel like the retention of these classes that Rhule is building is going to be much better than what we saw under Scott Frost. And I think that's really important because the recruiting ranking is fine when you sign them, but if they're not there in a year or two, what's the point, right? When you re-rank those classes, suddenly they look very different.
Yeah,
Boomer,
especially if you're going to call yourself a developmental program. I mean, you've got to retain those guys. It doesn't do any good to sign big classes, you know.
Well, not only that, but look at the number of walk-ons that he's getting too, and that's something else he talked about today too, right? Like, I mean, he's getting kids and around Nebraska that have D1 offers to other schools that are staying home. and coming to play at Nebraska because they know in this program, being a developmental program, that there's a realistic chance that they could end up getting playing time 2 or 3 years down the road, where at these other D1 programs, they may never see the field. They could just end up being other guys there. Right. And so, it's beautiful to see him talk about that, honor the tradition of the walk-ons here in Lincoln, and let these guys know from the beginning that if they believe in themselves, that the coaching staff will in turn believe in them as well.
Yeah, I believe you mentioned he thought, he's just a good talker. He's like, I think 3 or 4 of these preferred walk-ons could actually start for us, right? So, and he's already shown that he'll do that. So, I think overall, we're really pleased with the class, and should be interesting how we move into spring ball here. They start mat drills, I think, already, or is it next week, I believe, and then they will be in spring ball before we.
Real quick, Dave, I'd like to say thank you out to Justin Bank watching the Go Big Redcast. Thanks to the power of Aloe Fiber, Nebraska's greatest internet provider. I would also say that they are also Northern Colorado's greatest internet provider. And if you are looking for any Aloe Fiber for yourself or your business, feel free to reach out to me, Redcast Rob, and I'd be happy to help you with those needs.
Rob, is Aloe paying us yet?
Well, they're paying me.
Dang it.
Yeah.
Maybe we should get a cut from Rob, Boomer. What do you think?
I think so. Yeah. I mean, heck, I utilize their services. I should get some.
I tell you,
they're using the Redcast platform, Rob.
Right, exactly. You know what? Yeah. If we could get Tana, my coworkers Tana or the founder Brad to buy in, and trust me, I have been putting earworms out there for it. I even have, the coolest thing too is I even have coworkers that have come up to me and been like, "I love the podcast, man."
That's good.
Yeah, it's
all right.
great.
Well, we're gonna get them eventually.
We will eventually. So we'll see.
All right, Rob.
Sorry, I had to.
No, it's all right. Anything else from the presser that stood out to you? Anything else you want to talk about with Coach Rhule?
It's funny because normally, like, the optimism, the Kool-Aid that I would bring from maybe a Scott Frost presser, maybe came with a hint of facetiousness, only because, like, okay, show me, don't tell me what you're going to do, show me what you can do. But the optimism the true optimism that I have with the way that Rhule is doing this, it feels like, I hate using the term the right way. I mean, he's doing it the way it's supposed to be done, right? Like, this is how you're supposed to build a college football program. And it seems like he's getting the respect, not only around the league, but around the country, from a lot of people in regards to that. And I'm not talking Twitter, because those people are a bunch of idiots for the most part. So I'm talking about
our 30,000 followers, Rob.
Well, I'm talking about people that aren't Nebraska fans, Dave.
Oh, yeah, I see.
Yeah, because
our
the majority
non-followers
are non-followers. Well, we might have some non-followers that are idiots, or even followers that are idiots, but I'm not calling any of them that.
There's some people on the show that are idiots. I have no idea.
I mean, because let's quite frankly, I've been called an idiot plenty of times on there, and they're probably right at that as well. So
for good reason.
Yeah, but I mean, I'm feeling it, man. I feel good about it. None of my optimism is fake or sugar coated. It is 100% Kool-Aid. I'm feeling the same way about the football program that I'm feeling about the basketball program, which is we are a playoff team.
All right.
Yeah, I mean, I guess a few of the takeaways I took from the presser, outside of just, the recruits we signed, his comment how, Satterfield's definitely, he will call plays.
Yes.
I think that's a big thing. I believe his quote was never a question in my mind on that. So,
right.
The whole, Thomas is the co-OC type thing. Yeah, it sounds like Satterfield's still going to be your main OC there. Yeah,
absolutely. It was interesting. He said that Satterfield's the OC and Thomas is the co-OC, which somehow delineates. He's like the assistant to the OC.
Yeah, assistant to the OC is how I would define that now.
He's the assistant manager to the assistant manager.
Yeah.
Yes.
Right. So and he'd also commented about how he's all in on Rayola and Harbor.
Yeah, that was going to be my next point.
Yeah,
I actually thought.
I mean, granted, and Kalen obviously, but
yeah, he has to say
no choice because that's all we have at this.
Well,
point,
really. but to his point, he said he could go out and look for a 1-year quarterback, but that's not what he wants to be, because he's a developmental coach and he wants to be able to develop these kids, right? So he doesn't want to be a coach that keeps bringing in 1-year quarterbacks, not allowing the guys that he has there that he brought there with the intention of developing to be able to develop. So but, I can respect that. It's interesting what he was saying about Harburg and how he's just like, hey, let's get that kid a full season, a full spring where he's, practicing to be the number one quarterback and working with, our coaching staff to be the number one quarterback with the confidence that he can be the number one quarterback and see what happens.
That's something Honky's talked about. He's wanted to see what Harburg can do with the whole year of better coaching from what he's had, in the past, and what he could amount to. I mean, I would still think if once spring ball and that spring portal opens up, if there's a quarterback that's got a couple of years potential in there, I don't know if you just write him off and don't take a look at someone like that. I'd be hesitant to see if that would be the case. I mean, because you gotta put a lot of eggs in a basket of two freshmen and a and a quarterback that's not your typical normal quarterback with Harburg. I mean, he is what he is, and I think you do have to look at it.
How many true freshmen start for Division I programs every year? I guess that's a question that I've always thought about, but I've never been able to answer, never really asked, right? How many programs out there?
It can't be many, I wouldn't think.
But, I wouldn't think either.
Well, so Rob, I've seen Nebraska. Adrian Martinez started as a true freshman.
Correct.
It was an example. Right. We had multiple redshirt freshmen, but sometimes they do struggle. UCLA had Dante Moore this year. He started multiple games. He was a 5-star quarterback. Struggled a bit, and he's now transferred and now expecting to sit behind Dylan Gabriel at Oregon. But you also have other examples. For example, Alabama has started true freshman quarterbacks. Trevor Lawrence was a true freshman quarterback at Clemson, won a national championship. So I think it's a mixed bag. And some of that is, how well are they, ready to compete at that level right off the bat.
Yeah.
Fair.
And just a couple of things I want to hit on from the presser. He was asked a question, does he want his players to be doing other sports, as the season goes on? And he thought that's a great thing for his players to do that because, if you're running track, you're not playing video games, things like that. You're doing something, physical, which maybe, with the new NCAA football, video game coming out soon, maybe that's not the best approach to take. Who knows? Maybe that'll help people out a lot. But and then the other thing I noted was, there's a decent number of guys who are going to be out for spring practice that just aren't going to be able to, probably practice. I think Vermeer Johnson and Gabe Irvin are all out, and
still out.
Coleman's planning to be out.
Well, Malachi's out, but he's recovering from a shoulder. I mean, some of these guys, football players,
there's a lot of injuries that we're not going to see in spring, so it'll be interesting to see how well they, recoup from those injuries and come back. And I think Turner Corcoran, I don't even know if did he even imply he might be out for the season yet?
He just seems to have a lingering injury.
Really?
Won't go
he really
away.
does. I'm not sure if he's coming back at all.
That'd be a bit of a hit. As I think we're expecting Turner to. We're hoping he slides into a guard spot, but we'll see, I guess.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah,
so,
it's hard.
We got some guys, some key pieces that need to heal up this spring, and we're probably not going to see in the spring game. For those of us that go and watch, and when we talk about it, we're just not going to see everybody that they'll hopefully have back in the fall. So,
yeah, I hear you. Well, I mean, the spring game should be a spectacle because of Dylan Raiola. I think they're going to have a huge turnout.
Oh, absolutely.
It'll be
got my tickets today, so.
The wide receivers that they brought in to compete with the existing, wideouts. Another running back in the mix with Powell. So, let's hope for a good spring and one that clears up some of these questions that we have with the starting lineup. Boomer, there's been a lot of stuff going on in college football, even though it's the off season that will impact Nebraska in the future. And one thing that stood out to me was last week, the Big Ten and the SEC announced a joint advisory council that is going to look at all the problems that college football is having right now. What do you think about this joint advisory council?
It's one of those things where I think everyone knows what it really is, but they just don't want to admit it yet. I mean, this is... everyone knows those are the two power conferences that control college football essentially. And this advisory committee is set up to express the concerns they have and what they want to do with sports going forward. And I think it's the biggest challenge, that one of many challenges the NCAA has. But it's just right now when people talk about the NCAA, and for all of its faults, it's got plenty. It's in a very tough situation because it has to consider the needs of not only the power football schools, which is what the Big Ten and the SEC are, but it's got to consider the needs of what was the Pac-12 and the Big 12, and then Conference USA, and the American Athletic Conference, and everything down to Division III. It's trying to balance all of this, and how do you balance football needs with the NCAA basketball tournament? It's got almost too much to even be feasible for it to cover. And I think everyone's kind of been expecting something like this to happen soon, and I think this is the opening kind of push for the possibility of the Big Ten and the SEC just separating at least football, if not all their sports. I can't imagine all their sports would separate from it, but kind of testing the waters, putting their toe in it. And we've heard Trev Alberts, kind of insinuate something like this is happening in the near future. And it really does seem like this is starting to just slowly, kind of gather that steam, and it's going to break. That dam is going to break pretty soon, where something's going to happen for the big power football schools to do something different. I don't know what it's going to be or the exact form it's going to take, but I think this advisory committee is that first step to it. And
well, so far what I've learned from it is that they seem to be ready to advise a lot of the ACC teams to leave the ACC and come into the Big 12 or the Big 10 and the SEC.
We're done picking over the Big 12 and the Pac-12.
Big 12's carcass has been picked over. It's time for the ACC now. And
that's right.
Again, same guarantee, right? It's still the dumbest thing anyone's ever said.
It's so funny.
I cannot believe that. I couldn't believe it back in the day when they all signed it.
It's so funny to me. Like
I don't get it.
My dad recently changed television providers, right? And he's really upset because he doesn't have the Pac-12 network right now, right? and I told him, I was like, well, don't worry, in a few months it won't matter anyway. I'm pretty sure, like, as soon as
was he a big Washington State fan?
Arizona.
Okay.
My sister went to Arizona. I just want to be clear with that for a lot of people. My sister went to Arizona, and longer story from there. So,
they didn't let Rob in though.
Actually, they did, but they didn't have a soccer team. They only had a club team at the time. So it's true. It's true.
I know. I've heard the stories. I'm just giving you a hard time.
I've got an acceptance letter somewhere.
We don't need to hear about Rob's family bio.
No, but what I'm trying to say is that
it's okay. You're an Arizona Wildcat fan. It's okay, Rob.
The Pac-12 will no longer exist after this basketball season for the most part.
Yeah. So back to the actual topic. It's hard to say that this is the beginning of the end because we've had so many beginnings. This is probably just the next step to the inevitable end of some sort of split. Now, it could be that the Big Ten and the SEC put pressure on the NCAA to actually make internal changes. Boomer, you've made the point many times. The NCAA is made up of its member institutions, right? I mean, they should be able to dictate how the NCAA functions, right? So maybe there's enough pressure that the NCAA actually does somehow completely evolve from where they're at today, and they still have control of football, but it's different. Or maybe they do truly break off. There might be financial and administrative reasons that it's just more beneficial to be completely separate. But something of that nature is going to happen, and it feels like it's going to happen within the next, 3 or 4 years at longest. Is that fair to say, Boomer?
Yeah, I think so. I mean, everyone likes to, trash the NCAA, and again, they've made plenty of mistakes in this whole thing. But everyone always forgets that they're the arm that the schools chose to set up to, quote unquote, manage all this. I mean, if you go look at who runs the NCAA, the people on the board, they're just people from schools. It's, athletic directors and presidents. And
a bunch of D2 and D3 schools at that.
Yeah, exactly. And a lot of it is, it's just everybody, wants the NCAA to set these rules except for their own school. That's kind of the way it always is. It's just
exactly.
And granted, the NCAA doesn't do a great job of these things, but they're in a tough bind. I mean, I for the reasons we've explained.
Yeah.
And I think a lot of it, like you said, Dave, is going to come down to kind of where they're going to put football. We've kind of seen some early feelers from the NCAA when they talked about the subdivision that they promoted, where they would
that's right.
basically allow teams to essentially have unlimited, funds for coaching and everything else that they want to do, and pay essentially have money to put aside for players, and schools will have to choose whether they want to do that or not. Again, I don't know how feasible that really is, because if you're setting up that just massive and unlevel playing field between schools, how are you realistically in the same, conference anymore? I mean, that's a problem.
Yeah, I think you
end.
have to be all in or all out on that.
Yeah, exactly. And it's not even fair to be playing those teams anymore at that point. If you ask me, it's kind of absurd. Yeah. And there's other issues that are popping up. I mean, earlier, was it this week or last week, where National Labor Relations Board said Dartmouth's men's basketball players are technically employees.
Yeah,
that was a decision they made. So those kind of decisions are going to start rolling in more and more, I think, and that's going to have an impact on what schools choose to do and what they can do and can't do.
Yep.
It's just all this stuff is kind of coming to a head now, and it's going to happen fairly quickly, I think, in the next couple of years, and especially as the college football playoff evolves. What is the current contract up for the playoffs?
26, I believe. So ESPN
so I'm guessing by 26 we're going to see where this is going in the future. It's either going to be a completely split off thing once schools figure out how they can navigate, having a football program, how it works with Title IX, how it works with, funding and things like that. And so I would imagine by 26, we're going to have a lot more clarity on where this is going. And it's going to happen pretty quick once it does. So that's going to be the answer. Yeah.
Lawsuits out there from states on NIL and various different things.
The NIL lawsuits, we've seen it with Tennessee and the NCAA. It's just, all this, and where it's at right now isn't sustainable. Just in terms of the internal contradictions of it all. To go all Marxian on us, just it can't hold on to this. And
something's
going to break, and it's going to resolve itself the next year or two, I think.
Yeah. Speaking of internal conflicts and contradictions, I remember, I think it was during the national championship game or that day, Pete Thamel, who now works for ESPN, had a tweet that ESPN was going to lock down the new contract for the 12-team college football playoff for like 10 years. I haven't heard anything since that tweet. Isn't that interesting?
Yeah, that is. And that has raises some questions too. And then the news this week or yesterday even about how ESPN and Fox and who else was it, Warner Brothers
with Discovery,
massive new sporting app, essentially, how they're going to put all their sports products,
which is
to some degree or another, available together.
Which leads me to believe too that if Warner Brothers, ESPN, and Fox are all putting their things together, are we going to see a merger of the Marvel and DC universe?
No, Rob, we will not.
And tying the comic book,
at least on this show. Anyway.
Yeah, that's our other podcast, folks. If you want to listen to that, we can hit that later.
This whole mega sports streaming app idea is a little confusing to me, because if you listen to you get all the ESPN channels, you get all the Fox channels, including Big Ten Network, you get TNT and True. And then the NCAA tournament's on. Oh, sure. Yeah, FS1 and FS2. But, I mean, I get that personally right now, streaming on YouTube, or others get it on Hulu or whatever, right? So it's like, those are all the channels I already get, and it's all in one format.
Right.
So would I drop YouTube and anything else that I have on there? I'd probably not. So
I suppose it would depend on how they're marketing this. Is the price point going to be lower than your traditional YouTube, Hulu, whatever?
I think it'd be lower, but
it would
that's
have to
the big
be,
question,
just to make it
because
attractive to people. I think that's what they're aiming for, is the people that just want.
How low is the question? I think
regular TV, don't want to watch The View or the Masked Singer or whatever live. They don't care because they don't need that stuff and only want it for sports. Like Rob, he's a big are you a fan of The View or The Masked Singer, Rob? Which one is it?
Both, really.
I was trying to say that I was actually one of the people that didn't want to watch.
Oh, gotcha. Okay,
yeah. I don't know what the rest of the Steinberg family.
Your entertainment is what it is.
My wife might. I don't know.
Yeah.
YouTube's $75 plus or minus, depending on what you're getting there. And, the single streaming stuff is between 10 and 20, depending on what you're getting, right? And so if this is above 20, because you're talking about like 15, 20 channels, maybe it's, a low end would be 30 or 40, and it could be upward of 50, I guess. And
maybe it's like a just kind of thing, an easy pack to sell to bars or something like that.
That would work well. That would make a lot of sense.
Something like that. I don't know what the market is for that. It's fairly substantial, I would think.
Yeah.
I mean, that'd be that. And then, what all sports are going to be on this? Are they going to have,
sure,
like on-demand stuff? Can I go back and watch a game earlier? That's going to be a question.
If it had more,
Time Warner involved in this. I know we're all big pro wrestling fans here on the Redcast. Would AEW be involved in this? They're on all the Turner networks currently right now, TNT and TBS, that kind of stuff.
Right.
There's content they could put on it, but I don't know what the extent of it's going to be.
Is ESPN Plus included?
Yeah, ESPN Plus, Big Ten Plus going to be on this? Am I going to be able to watch a shaky cam version of a Big Ten baseball game? That they barely pay attention to in the conference. Yep. There's a lot of questions on it. Or is this going to break down like the Big Ten, ACC, Pac-12 scheduling alliance, and it's just going to amount to nothing ultimately? I don't know, but.
Yeah, I wouldn't think they would have announced it if they weren't going to.
Yeah, there would be value to the people that just want to watch sports, I think is what it is. And there may be a market for that. We'll see how substantial it is. And possibly it's just something to compete with, the Amazons that seem to be really pushing, getting some sports themselves.
Remember when
Netflix
ESPN,
getting WWE, so all the streaming services seem to be pushing hard for controlling live sports content that people want to watch. So this is just their answer to that.
ESPN Plus on their app, right? And so like you had to download the ESPN Plus app on your TVs, and you had to have ESPN Plus app on your phone, and then they merged it into just the ESPN app after a while, and then it disappeared completely off the TV, and then it became part of your Hulu subscription with Disney Plus, and
it's still separate, but
it was no, because like for me, when I log into Hulu, I can see all my Disney. I can see all my.
I understand. I have. But you could buy it separately if you want, and it's a separate app. So.
I don't know that they stream it that way much anymore. Do they? Still?
I have it. You can still have your ESPN app, and ESPN Plus is a tab on it.
Oh, okay.
We're not gonna argue about that though. So.
Well, no, I'm just saying, like, they kind of just got away from they got away from it for the most part. I mean, it's like now they make it available like so readily available. It's just interesting to me because you have so many large television, I mean, essentially Fox, Disney, and Warner Brothers, agreeing to combine to do one sports app. I mean, they've got to know something that we don't, is my point.
Yeah. I'm not doubting that it's probably going to be fine. I just like, for me personally, I don't know if I would get rid of YouTube TV for it, right? So I'll be intrigued to see how it's priced and what benefits it brings. So if, to Boomer's point, it included NFL football that's on Prime on Thursdays, and Peacock that we're watching Big Ten stuff on now. If that was all included,
and Australian
then I'm now not hopping around those
exactly.
things. Now I've got some value there, but I already have the ability to watch almost everything they're proposing on a YouTube TV, right? So that's where I'm a little confused. All right, guys. Been a fun little chat here. You guys ready for some parting shots?
Always ready, Dave. Yeah.
Take that as a yes. Boomer, get us going.
All right. Well, it is February, and March is around the corner. So, now that we have March Madness, you've got the Omaha Supernovas, playing volleyball. They've had some coaching changes, but that's around the corner. And don't forget, as Rob mentioned, Australian rules football. That's starting up in March. So get everything fired up and pick your favorite AFL team and start rooting for the ladder. Hey, if you didn't watch it last year, just go ahead and give it a shot. I mean, that the final game last year was just outstanding to watch.
It was.
I mean, that was so much fun. I didn't like either of the teams in it, but I was just totally glued to that screen watching that game. So if you've never watched Australian rules football, give it a shot this year and pick a team, and you can root with us or against us, depending on who you like. So
that's right.
Go St.
And we're just around the corner for women's softball, who's
Yep.
going to be playing in Puerto Vallarta, I believe, and Nebraska baseball. So we'll start talking about those here soon. Nebraska softball will be interesting with Jordy Bball and their quest to potentially host a regional if they're as good as advertised. All right, Rob,
Well,
your shot.
I got my ticket for the spring game today. I will be attending with Honky and his family, and I'm looking forward to it. I am not going to be trying to get any type of press passes or anything like that this year. I was able to get myself a nice little Airbnb about half a mile from campus. From the stadium, I should say. I'll be just hanging out in Lincoln for a few days, maybe getting some work done through Allo Fiber, the greatest internet company in the entire state of Nebraska. And in case anyone hasn't figured out, I am employed by them now, so that's why I keep talking about it. But I will be at the spring game. I'm looking forward to going out there, and then not only just the football game, because baseball and softball are both going to be playing at home that day as well. I'm going to try to get in the rare triple header and try to go to all three. I'm sure that Honky will join me in those festivities, and I'm sure that a beverage or 17 will be had at that time. And so, Redcasters, if any of you are looking to maybe get together and tailgate any of those situations, I would love to hear about it, because I'd love to hang out with you guys and meet you, because it's always nice meeting Redcast fans.
Absolutely.
All right. Sounds like a date. And really, Rob, the stadium and the campus are the same thing. So if you're a mile from the stadium or whatever, you're a mile from campus. It's all good. Yeah.
Okay. Well,
that's right.
Yeah. Well,
right.
Yeah. Okay. Fair.
All right, guys. We had a lot to chat about to catch up on. Hopefully we'll have a show here in the next week or two, and we're talking about more Nebraska basketball victories, and we'll start sprinkling in some baseball and softball talk. For now, let's call that another Go Big Redcast.
Go Big Red.
A Herd at Sports Network production.